our next speaker, straight from North Carolina, Ben, working on a pretty interesting project called eth.limo. And I'm sure he's happy to tell you guys what it is about. So take it away, Ben.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This is my first time in Lisbon. It's a really cool city. I'll say everybody has told me that this is considered cold weather, but being from the southern United States, like it feels great outside. So anyway, so eth.limo, we are a privacy preserving ENS gateway or bridge, depending on how you want to refer to that. And the goal of that is to provide connectivity for website resolution through a browser for users that don't want to have a specialized client, or they may not have the expertise to be able to install that. So we stealth launched this in August of 2021, got some really big adoption through partnering with the ENS DAO, and we've been fortunate enough to receive grants from both the Ethereum Foundation and the ENS DAO itself. Those are both really fantastic organizations to work with, so if you are fortunate enough to be able to be in that position, you will not regret it. It's a fantastic experience. We serve a lot of traffic for, I think, right now, a fairly niche market. So websites are kind of a very nascent thing at the moment, and we'll talk a little bit about just kind of what those are, what they're comprised of. But I think it's important to stress that we made a very conscious decision when we launched this service that we would not collect user data. That's for compliance purposes. But also because we want to respect users' privacy. We don't care where you're coming from. We don't want to know that. We don't want to be able to correlate any of that data. And it's a never-ending battle because there are proxies and different applications depending on how users connect to us over HTTP that can append headers and things like this. So we're constantly sort of monitoring and evolving that to make sure that we're stripping any of that out of our logs. And if you are an ENS domain holder currently, if you use the kind of default registration tool, app.ens domains, we're the default gateway resolver for that. So you'll get a nice little link using Limo, so you can actually click and go resolve your site there. So if you're not familiar with this, a website, particularly within the confines of Ethereum name service, is comprised of a name and then machine-readable location. In this case, it's a content hash, which uses multi-formats, which then decodes to a multi-hash. In this case, it's an IPFS location. That IPFS content identifier will then contain all the information that your browser needs to render a static site. So that's in your index, HTML, Webpack.js, images, kind of all of that stuff. Packages it up nicely. We resolve that and then deliver it back to the browser. You can use this. I will say that there are a number of tools out there now that do provide this natively so that you do not have to use a gateway service if you don't want to. Although that doesn't work for the majority of users if they want to be able to maybe provide a clickable, valid URL for somebody. We see a lot of users that use ENS sites for resumes, for example, and so that's obviously important if you're sending that to someone that they're able to access it. And here's an example using Vitalik's website. He often tweets using limo links, which is really cool, and I've got a slide later about that, just kind of fun. So our main thesis for this is making ENS adoption and websites more accessible. This is something that I think engineers can benefit from primarily because now there is a service that allows you to give valid URLs to people to access this. It's zero setup for you. It's very easy for the developer to be able to throw up a website. We can resolve it. Your users can then start accessing it that way. And at the end of the day, HTTP is still probably the most widely used protocol on the internet. If you want grandma and grandpa to be able to go to an ENS site, they're going to be using HTTP for that. They're probably not going to install Brave or the MetaMask ENS extension. So it's really nice from that. And we've done a lot of work to optimize the content retrieval on the back end to make this as quick as possible and responsive for our end users. And it's community supported as well. So we have a very active Discord. We're active in the ENS DAO as well. And that kind of gives you a location, come ask questions. And it's helped us to learn a lot more about how websites are being used and some of the challenges that developers and end users end up experiencing using this. So this is just a high-level architecture overview of the service. Yes, it is centralized because in a way it has to be, but this has provided us a really good opportunity to understand some of the challenges around gateways in general. A gateway, for instance, Skynet, Swarm, Arweave, IPFS, I'm sure everybody here has used one of those at some point in time. Cloudflare or Protocol Labs run some of the more prominent gateways. So we just do this for ENS domains. And we can support dynamic certificates too. So if you have subdomains, you don't have to go through the kind of cumbersome process of requesting a wildcard certificate or any of that. There's some very cool tools that are out there now with reverse proxies that allow you to easily integrate with the CA of your choice to be able to provide that. And on this kind of like DWeb storage side of things, so these are common storage protocols, but then we have NIMI, which is really cool project that provides kind of an on-demand dynamic social page. So if you have an ENS domain, but maybe you didn't configure a content hash or you don't want to do that for whatever reason, they'll render oh no, there we go. They'll render a nice little page for you with all of the other supported text fields for an ENS domain. So you can have your Twitter, GitHub. This is just Nick Johnson's example. We like to use that because he's well known. Go back a slide. I don't know how that got out of order. So some of the features that we do support, though, is that we have cross-chain compatibility with ENS. So if you maybe delegated a name to a layer 2 to issue subdomains for end users, we can kind of resolve that. And it supports ENS IP10 wildcards. So this is, again, really useful for projects that maybe are handing out ENS names for people, and if they don't set a content hash, it can traverse the name tree back until it finds a content hash that exists. We support all of the major peer-to-peer storage layers that are supported by ENS. We have a DNS over HTTPS API now that we launched a few months ago. This is really useful if you want to connect like your Go IPFS client. Cubo, I think is what it's called now. So if you want to be able to resolve ENS names natively, locally, you can use that. And there's a pinning API as well. So if you're a project that generates a lot of content for end users on the IPFS network, you can pin it directly on our gateway nodes. Delivers a much better user experience because we don't have to go and find where this content is on the IPFS network, which adds sometimes considerable latency depending on node availability, how much the content has been replicated, et cetera. And there's zero setup. So if you have an ENS domain and you've got a valid content hash, if you just add eth.limo, we will be able to get it and resolve it in a browser for you. So to kind of deal with one of the limitations with our service, which it being centralized, obviously, ICANN, hosting companies, cloud providers, all of this, those are single points of failures that we have to figure out how to mitigate, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for users that want to actually have the most decentralized experience for ENS domains, we created a tool called Chauffeur. We like to stick with the transport theme due to limo, because we're taking you in style into the DWeb. But this is basically a complete local stack of the eth.limo architecture. You can run this. It's a Docker Compose configuration, so it should be cross-platform. It's optimized for Linux now, specifically because of the way systemd resolver works. So this can provide you with native OS-level resolution instead of being just confined to a browser. So you can access ENS domains over a CLI, for instance. And it's also very customizable, I should say, too. You can get in and muck with any of the configurations. You can add or remove features. You can use any RPC endpoint that you want to, which obviously we do recommend. And we've kind of just very loosely announced this to a couple of people. So this is actually like the broad debut of it. So if you are interested in contributing, there's the GitHub URL. There's a Discord link at the end if you want to talk to us more about it, or come grab me after this. So some of the things that we're working on is emoji support for names. That's a pain in the ass, especially when it comes to certificates in a browser and the way that it interacts with puny code and Unicode decoding and all of that stuff. We also want to offer our own public IPFS CDN so that you have the same privacy policy and guarantees that we provide with the eth.limo resolver. And some of the things that we've learned from this journey, talking with other developers, there are kind of a couple of pain points that exist with deploying or designing or making D websites more accessible to other people, not just to access, but to also be able to kind of get up to speed, deploy it very quickly without having to go and unravel 24 acronyms and read a bunch of different guides and things like this. And so we're kind of calling this tool suite DevOps for the D-Web. And this is, from my experience, being SRE and kind of DevOps engineer for a lot of SaaS startups. There's kind of a missing link there with like A/B testing, blue-green deployments. A D-Web deployment is kind of an all-or-nothing operation. If there's an error or a bug or some type of vulnerability, you've got to be able to quickly roll that back. And so we're working on some ways to do that in the most decentralized way possible. And then SEO optimization, that's kind of a big thing. So these sites are relatively difficult for search engines to be able to index because they're not accessible unless that crawler has specifically been engineered to be able to enumerate ENS domains and has the protocol support to go out and get all of that stuff. So we've been working to try to make that more visible to search engines since it is kind of a bridge from Web 2 to Web 3. And this also includes educational material to make this, I think, a little more easily understood for end users and providing some privacy-focused analytics for people. This is something else, like if you don't want to use Google Analytics on your page, you don't really have a lot of insights into how people are using your particular site or application. And as a result of kind of this whole experience, one of the things that we realized was that gateways are, they're not going away anytime soon. Unfortunately, for adoption to continue, and this applies to not just projects like this, but this could be Infura. This could be really anything that operates at an HTTP level to make it easier for end users to access things. We're working on a way that we can make that as decentralized as possible and mitigate a lot of the risks that are associated with ICANN, RN, RIPE, kind of all of the NGO, multinational or standards organizations that oversee a lot of the governance for this. And we're working at a D-Web search engine as well. We're really well positioned to be able to index a lot of that content and make it easy to find. So when you talk about decentralizing gateways, there are a lot of challenges there. So a lot of the talks earlier, if anyone's familiar with the OSI model, everything is at layer 7. It is at the application level. But at the end of the day, there is still incredible centralization that exists, not just with cloud providers, but the ISPs, the backbones. If anybody's ever seen that underwater submarine cable map, like if you're talking to Europe for anything, you're going over like 2 links. That's it. Like the majority of traffic is highly centralized there. So we're looking at how to use BGP and autonomous systems to make this as decentralized as possible. I don't think that there's a panacea for this in terms of absolutely saying this is 100% decentralized. The best that you can do, just like within security and privacy, is mitigate the risk and try to reduce that, the surface attack for governance, censorship, kind of all the nasty things that come along with this. And part of that has to do with, deal also with DAOs custodying some of these assets. So if I were to go buy an IP block from RIPE and I want to use BGP, well, who's going to administer that? Who's going to be the legal entity that is the point of contact for that? It's not clear. So with projects like LexDAO and a couple of others, they're kind of working on these DAO frameworks to make basically a one-click deployment of a legal company. And with the advent of the Wyoming DAO LLC, a lot of this kind of solves some of these problems for us. So as part of this entire effort of not just technology, but then also a legal process and framework to make custodying these assets, again, as decentralized as possible to mitigate some of the controls that exist there. So I just want to thank my team at Limo. I'm the only one here that could make it, but they do a really good job. Nimi has been fantastic as well. They've really been inspirational to work with. They help us understand a lot of the challenges and how to improve our project as well. DXDAO as well. They've been some of our biggest supporters and early adopters of eth.limo, and so it's been a pleasure of working with them. TRGC for putting on this event, and I did leave off the ENS DAO as well, so thank you as well. And this is just kind of cool. This was when we kind of blew up December of last year when Vitalik first tweeted a eth.limo link. He's been using it ever since. And it's just, I don't know, a cool thing. It's a badge of honor to actually see kind of, one of the biggest names in the Ethereum scene using your service. And so very cool there. And here's information if you want to get in touch with us. Our Discord is probably where we're the most responsive. My brother manages the Twitter, so he'll try to respond to you if you send him a message. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben.